p.m., July 24th, 2026. And I'm eating dinner.
Hey, leaving the Mormon Church is so easy, you silly goose. Why are you making this cozy, friendly religion seem so crazy? Well, honestly, it's because it is actually legitimately more complicated than simply walking out the building. And in today's video, I'm not talking about how when you leave the church, you'll probably get a lot of pushback from your family, or maybe they'll disown you. I'm not talking about how you have to go out and figure out how you're going to replace your magic underwear, because those are obviously considerations too. Because like I said, I literally wrote an entire book about all the things I had to think through in order to detach myself from this very high demand religion. But what I'm talking about today is that to actually truly leave the Mormon Church, you have to go through a process called removing your records. Remove your records, which is also known as renouncing your membership in the church, is the spiritual equivalent to excommunicating yourself from the church. When I personally removed my own records, it was about 8 years ago, and in order to formally remove my records from the church, I actually had to use a law firm in order for me to feel like I could leave the church on my own terms rather than following the steps that the church wanted me to follow. At the time, I used a service called quitmormon.com. It's still in operation. It's run by an ex-Mormon who is also a lawyer. I'm going to link that website below in case there are any ex-Mormons watching this who want to start the process. I'll say that a common concern is that your family will find out that you've removed your records, and there is some chance that if you remove your records, your family will find out. So if you don't want to risk that, then don't press that button. I'll explain more about Quit Mormon in a bit, along with explaining the technical side of how it works to remove your name from the church. But to back up a bit, even if you stop attending as a member of the Mormon Church, even if you stop attending, even if you haven't gone in for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, they are still 100% counting you as a member of the church. Unless you go through the process of removing your name, your membership could very well follow you for your entire life. And that means that missionaries could show up at your door, you might get text messages, emails, you might get a ministering visitor coming over asking if you want to come to church. I've heard stories of people opening their door and there's someone standing there with a birthday cake and they say, "Hey, I saw in your membership record that it's your birthday. Would you like to come back to church?" Of all of these attempts at reactivation, that's what Mormons call it, attempts at reactivation, my personal favorite that I see on the ex-Mormon subreddit is that people will randomly get text messages asking them to show up to clean the church building for free on a Saturday. I left the church about a year after getting married in a Mormon temple, and I have several different videos about that if you want to understand my thought process of what made me leave the church. But even after I stopped attending, I still had that pesky membership record looming in the back of my mind. Not long after me and my husband decided to leave the church, we moved from Lehi, Utah to New York City. We moved to Brooklyn. And I remember thinking in my mind, like, ha ha ha, they'll never find me here. Well, about a month after moving in, there's a knock at the door, and I look through the little peephole and I see 2 black name tags, and I'm like, oh my god, Jackson, they found us. And so I'm like, I don't want to talk to these people, so I run to a different room. Jackson opens the door, and here are the missionaries asking if Jackson and Alyssa live at this address and if they would like to come to church that Sunday. I'll tell more stories in this video, but it really felt like a full circle moment because when I was a Mormon missionary, one of my responsibilities was doing the same thing to other people, was going and looking through new addresses and going to their homes and trying to get them to come back to church. And now, having experienced that behavior myself in New York, I can honestly say it does kind of feel like you're being stalked. To make it abundantly clear, I did not, neither me or my husband, we did not give our address to the church. We didn't give our address to the missionaries. They just showed up. They got our address from some other source other than us. And so later in this video, I'll tell more of the details of that story. And explain how it is that they got our address, but I share this story at the beginning merely to illustrate that if you want to leave the church, you're going to have to go to greater lengths than simply like not showing up on Sunday. And the measures you have to take to leave the church are more significant than just like going to some portal online and pressing cancel subscription. I'll say too that a common ex-Mormon rite of passage, as you can see in these videos, is basically filming yourself showing how you've removed your name from the records of the church, and that this is kind of like a final act of defiance for a lot of people. And one thing you might notice in some of these videos I'm sharing is that these people have to go to a notary. And that's another thing I'm going to talk about in today's video, that they have this process you have to go through in order to remove your name from the church. And part of that is that you have to find a notary and pay a notary. And unless you do that, the church might very well say like, well, we don't think you are who you say you are, so we're going to choose to not accept your resignation. And for me, one of the craziest elements of this membership record that gets created when you are baptized at 8 or if you're a convert is that other people can update it completely without your consent. There's a position in the Mormon Church called a ward clerk, and really anyone who
Huh? Yeah. No one even showed up at all? Okay. Okay. We'll have to wait for my berries to thaw anyway. Let's not. Oh. How much do I need to wait for these berries to thaw? A little while. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I'll have some dessert later. Yeah, so thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Especially thank you for commenting because it gives me something to work with. And I'll be back in a little while with my dessert. So yeah, thanks for joining. Bye.